Complexity exposes how organizations actually operate. As growth and pressure increases, the issue is no longer strategy. It's sustaining execution, accountability, and leadership consistency across the business. This is Operating Discipline with Terry Wilson, conversations with CEOs and senior leaders about organizations' performance as pressure increases. Today's conversation is with Troy Asberry, the Chief Operating Officer at Lion Energy. Welcome, Troy. How are you?
I'm doing well, Terry. Thank you for having me.
I am really excited to talk with you because in almost every conversation we've had, I just get more and more intrigued and want to have a bigger conversation with you. But I know we only have 30 minutes, so we're going to narrow it down to the importance of people in how organizations actually operate. So I'm going to give it to you. Run away.
All right. Well, thank you, Terry. So, thank you so much for having me on board. And I really appreciate you and your team's effort and the communications that we've had thus far to get us to this point. So, I really appreciate that. And thank you again for having me on your show. So, look, I think that operating discipline really starts on the beginning. Of the hiring process. I think that there are enough different lean, Kaizen, a lot of different processes to get you to operating discipline, but it's really about the person you hire and onboard to your organization because it's about hiring the right person and then once you do that piece, that is really what I think is the easy piece. The hardest piece is really getting them onboarded. And I think that there are several different onboarding processes. There's the onboarding on the team that they're going to belong to and that manager and that style. And then there is the organization as a whole, the bigger organization. If you're at GE, you're going to do it the GE way. If you're at Lion, you're going to do it our way. Really good friends with Adam Norwith at Amphenol. He calls them Amphenalians. So you're going to be onboarded until that larger organization. And then I will also tell you there's a final piece that I think that we forget about as professionals. It's the not only the onboarding of that person, but it's the onboarding of their support systems that help them, their mentors, their teachers, their parents, all the other people who support them, their spouse, their children. So there's a whole host of onboarding that you're doing, trying to make sure that this person and all of the trappings of that person is the right fit for you and your organization, you as a team leader, but also as the organization as a whole. So I think that those processes have to be thought about when you're onboarding and hiring someone to join your organization.
So I have a question because you went a little broader than I think most companies do. You just said something that I think is really interesting, the whole support system of the person. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I've learned throughout my years of leadership, and I've been in this business leadership. I've been leading since I was 14, through the military and JROTC, in high school, and all the way through. Spent 22 years in the military, the Texas Army National Guard, but then 35 years out here in the broader world. And what I've learned is in that is that when you onboard a person and bring someone into your organization, you are really bringing their support system into that organization. And you want someone that's going to grow, but their family's going to grow, their family's going to expand. Some cases, it's going to contract. And all of those things impact the employee and how they perform. So you want to make sure that you know the holistic person because whatever they're going through, that experience is going to come through at the human resource level at the job. And you've got to be able to deal with that, whether that's a marriage, a birth, good news, whether that's a death, whether that's prison. Bad news. So we've got to be able to deal with that holistic person because that's all part of the operating discipline. And there are times when people are just not prepared to work that day That doesn't mean that you give up on them. That just says you're not in a good position to run this equipment today. So, you know what? Why don't we send you home with pay? And then let's talk about this tomorrow or the next day when you're in a better shape to deal with this. There are certain situations that you don't want someone operating heavy equipment. That's my view, and that's how I approach servant leadership.
So, I love that. I guess I'm just, kind of in the back of my head, Troy, what I keep hearing, and I know that this has changed, but it's still there. When I was building my career, it's leave your personal stuff at the door, come in and do your job. And I know that that has changed, but you just kind of you're taking it to another level that I wonder if other organizations, one, do that. Two, what are the benefits of doing that?
Yeah. So, look, this high responsive organizations are doing this. They want to know the holistic person. Yeah, you can have top down organizations. Those leaders don't last long. If you're going to be in an organization past 3 to 5 years and really grow and turn that organization into what you want it to be, you have to think about all of that. And we do that. A lot of us do that at the C suites where we know each other's wives and spouses, and we're out golfing with one another because we're out knowing each other and what makes that person tick. And you have to filter that all the way down throughout the organization. But let me get to the benefits because I think it's really important because a lot of people believe that when you're doing that, you're losing something. I beg to differ. You have more engaged employees who stay with your organization longer, who stay at the office longer, who work from home and do things that you're not paying for because they know you care about them and what makes them tick. And it's okay to say, hey, you're not in the right frame of mind to be here. Or why are you here? Your wife just graduated with her PhD. You're not, it's not necessary for you to be here today. Go home and celebrate that. Or go home and celebrate your kid just got into law school. Those are moments that we want to celebrate with you. But there are also moments that I know I've showed up to people's burying their loved one, and they're like, "Boss, I didn't expect to see you here. We're family and we're connected. Not just the 40 to 60 hours we put in at the office, but I'm connected with you. And if you're hurting, the entire organization is hurting with you, and we want to see you through this."
Wow, that is incredibly powerful. And I think, you know, most people want that. They want to know that the place where they work cares about them, not just what they can deliver, but cares about them as a person because we're all going to go through ups and down, twists and turns. And I think one of the worst things we can do is when someone walks into the office and you know it's not a good day, it's not a good season of their life, and you act like you don't even see it. You just want them to do their job.
That's
And
right.
and then you wonder why they're not engaged or why they're not contributing as much as they could. And it's like, well, where's your part in that?
That's correct. And we have to own that. We have to own that as an organization, as a leader. You have to own knowing your people and knowing what's going on with your people, not just a, hey, Terry, how you doing? It's, hey, Terry, tell me about your weekend. Tell me about your kids. Tell me about your grandkids. And those are the things why going back to office matters because it's hard to get that connection over Teams. And it's hard to get that connection if you're not at the water cooler, if you're not enjoying coffee with one another. It's hard to get that personal attention and personal touch if you're not there personally involved in hearing those moments. So, as much as people complained about coming back to work after COVID, post COVID, I think that that was really important and that we do a good balance, but we want to know you and we want to know what makes you tick. Whatever those things are, those are the things that we want to be able to foster in you because the more I give to you and allow you to do and express your way that makes you happy, I'm a big believer that gives you more incentive to do better and more for us as a company. And I
No,
think that's where that operating discipline begins.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you know my background is like this is my sweet spot, and I think Troy. One of the things is super important. I hear you, and I believe you. The question is, how does that get embedded in an organization? So we started with hiring the right people. If you have openings in your leadership team, what do you interview for to ensure that what you just said is actually what people will do, what leaders will do?
Yeah. So look, hard question. And I hope my answer isn't oversimplified. Look, first thing as a good leader, whenever I walk into an organization, I want to get a sense of the organization. And before I start, I always look at the organizational design and do we have good roles, responsibilities, expectations married up to a really good job description. If you don't have that good balance of organizational design, RREs, roles, responsibilities, expectations, tied to a good job description, it's very hard to interview
Mhm.
because you don't know what you're looking for
Absolutely.
and where they're going to fit in the organization.
Mhm.
So I'll give you an example of how I see that playing out. I was with a company called Scapa. Um, when I started at the company, we were valued at 30 million. Um, we turned around and sold the company 10 years later, 11 years later for 613.9 million. And we went on a journey of really going back in and looking at the organization, the roles, responsibilities, expectations, and tying it to a good job description. And what that really helped not only the leaders, but everyone down in the organization is to have a very tunnel focus on what their job was and how important it was to the overall growth of the business. And then we had a little watchwords, three small words after we got the organizational design right, the roles, responsibilities, expectations, and tied that to a job description. Then we had a really simple philosophy of cash, profit, and growth. And if we could do all three of those things, then we had a successful year. If we were generating cash, if we were profitable, and if we were growing, then we had a really good year. And our CEO at the time, a guy by the name of J. Che, really drilled that into us. And it has served me well since I've left that organization over a decade ago and really focusing in on those three little catchwords, but also making sure that we've got a good organizational design, roles, responsibilities, expectations tied to a really robust job description.
Yeah, no, a lot in what you just said. And I think, just going to the last thing you said, keeping it that simple is huge because there are so many messages being thrown at you at the same time. And I know I worked for an organization, amazing organization, loved working there. But I remember when I worked at their headquarters for a couple of years, at some point, I went to my VP and I'm like, what do you want me to focus on? Because there's so many messages coming to me that I'm confused. And I think that happens more often than not. So whenever I think about operating discipline, it's like, what do we really want people to focus on, right? And those three words were huge that you just said. If we can keep it that simple. And so as you interview leaders coming in, or, to invite people to come and work with you, how do you keep it that simple of what we're looking for?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. So look, I tell people what I'm really looking for is I'm looking for people who are intellectually curious.
Okay.
If you're asking the right questions, if you're not afraid to go out on a limb and ask a question, if you're not afraid to challenge and to have a debate, um, In my years of doing this, I will tell you there are rarely black and white answers. There's always some nuance. And if you're not able to have that nuanced conversation and to be intellectually curious, almost every time someone has said, "Oh, I'm intellectually curious," that's a person I generally hire because I know that they're smart and they're going to ask and challenge me. And I always tell people, your number one job is to hire the right person. At my level, that's the most important thing that I can do is hire the right people and infuse them with being intellectually curious and asking the right questions. Because if you can do those things and you can make the company about you, my big break into the executive world was I went and asked our general manager, VP, I've got to be 23, 24 years old. And I asked, hey, how did the company do this quarter? And elderly gentleman looked at me. I'm not going to get his name. He looked at me and says, why do you care?
Wow. Wow.
He
Okay.
looked at me and said, why do you care? And I said, it's my company too. His mouth fell open.
Mhm.
He told his assistant, cancel my next meeting, and then he said, "Troy, come in here and sit down."
Wow. That's amazing.
And he said, "I've never had anybody tell me that. I'm so glad you did. Now let me show you where we are and how you can help."
Oh my gosh, what an amazing story. What an amazing.
And excuse me, and I followed that person around for almost 20 years.
Yeah, I think again, every time I talk with you, there's so many different ways we could go. I think, the intellectual curiosity, absolutely. I want to go here for a minute because I think this is really important. We can look for that and hire to that. What role does the organization have when we hire those people and they do those things that we want them to do? What's the organization's responsibility?
Oh, good question. Because I think that there's a whole host of responsibilities an organization have. So first of all, when you hire someone,
Mhm,
as I told you earlier, that's the easy part. The
mhm,
next couple of steps are very, very difficult. This is when I tell you you're dropping that person into hot grease because there's this whole process of getting along and understanding the team and then understanding the bigger organization that you belong to. And so, and what do intellectually curious people do? They ask a lot of questions about the team. How do they fit into the team? How can they contribute to the team? And here's the most important part. How can they help the team excel?
mhm,
And what you're looking for are people who are willing to not just help the team, but help the company excel. Because if we're all rowing in the same direction and all have the same intent of helping the company excel, not just you, not just your team, but then reaching across the aisle and helping the entire company succeed. So intellectually curious people are able to tear down those silos that separate the company and are asking everyone else, how does all of this come together so that we can deliver on cash, profit, and growth? And
mhm.
so those intellectually curious people are not only excelling on their teams, they're breaking down silos on all the other teams and figuring out the sweet spots on how they can help the organization deliver on those three promises.
Yeah, nope, I totally get it. So I'm gonna go back to my question because I think organizations have a significant responsibility here. I have seen too often we say what we want, we hire what we want, and then when people come in to do what we said we wanted, the system doesn't receive that. And then people hit walls, and at some point they just kind of fold. And I've
But
seen
that's
that so often. And so I'm really curious because that's why I asked about organizational responsibility. It's who are we if we value if we value intellectual curiosity. How does that show up? And how do we support that? How do we encourage that? How do we take action on it? That's the piece I think is really curious because I don't think it happens that often.
Yes. So here's my answer, and thank you for the question, because I think what I didn't do is I didn't tell you how people receive you, right? So when you're intellectually curious, and especially if you're intellectually curious and you're moving up, sometimes there'll be people who have allergic reactions to you. These can be people like your boss who can make it very difficult for you, or your boss's boss, or another organization's boss or boss's boss. So you are on a tightrope with your intellectual curiosity, and you've got to be able to present it in a non threatening way. I'm just curious on how this works. So when I ask my boss's boss, hey, how did we do this quarter? And his allergic response of why do you care? He
Mhm,
was so taken aback by my disarming of him saying, "Well, it's my company too, and I want us to do well."
mhm,
So it's not only how you present it, but it had to take a chance for me to go back and say, "Oh, he didn't receive that properly."
mhm,
Because I wasn't saying it in a threatening manner. I'm 3 to 4 levels below you. But when I'm able to say, "Oh, it's my company too. I apologize. It's my company too. I want to see us do well." That took that negative perception of, oh, you're just here. I got another young kid trying to come up in the world.
mhm.
It took that all away, and it became a teaching moment when he could sit down and mentor me. And that mentorship lasted for 20 years.
Yeah, that's super amazing. Sorry.
Yeah, so you've gotta be able when you're intellectually curious, it's gonna take you into places and rooms and spaces that you probably are not supposed to be in at that level, at that position, and that's okay. You just gotta be able to walk in and say, "Hey, I'm just trying to understand how this all comes together so that I can help all of us excel." And that way it's a non-threatening manner. But if you come in hot, hey, how the company doing? I want to know. Am I gonna get? Because you don't know how people are gonna take that.
Sure.
Was he trying to figure out? Do I want a bonus? What is it? And of course, there's a thing that I like to say is people in the lack of information fill the void with bad data, and because I didn't make it clear. Hey, I want to understand how the company is doing so I can see where I can help. He filled that with bad data. I don't know what you wanna know, so why do you care?
Yes. Yeah.
And so you have to be very intentional,
Mhm,
and you have to put people at ease, and
mhm.
that's what's important if you want a positive response. Be intentional, put people at ease, but still be intellectually curious and ask questions, and tell people, "I'm trying to connect the dots so that I can help all of us excel."
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I would say we've been talking about hiring, but let's say you hire the person, that's how they got in, you love their, intellectual curiosity, they're standing out in a lot of different ways. If they're a leader and they're not doing that with their team, how would you know that?
Hmm. Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah.
See,
Yes. So
that's one of my things. I ask really interesting questions.
no, that's a really interesting question. Well, I generally tell people, first of all, if you know the numbers, you know the numbers. So it generally is always going to show up in the numbers.
Mhm,
It's like, and it can be in strange ways in numbers. So if you're like me, I want stats on everything. I want to know how many people Terry Wilson has on her team.
mhm.
And then I want to know their average attendance rate. 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week. How many people are out? How many people are coming in and staying and doing overtime? How well is that department doing from revenue growth? Is it EBITDA? Is it margin? How do they contribute and how is it showing up in the number? And I will tell you generally the first way that I know that people are not good leaders is their people don't start showing up to work.
Mm,
It's it's one of the telltale signs. It's
mhm,
right that when there's disharmony on the team, I don't want to be there.
mhm,
Can I work from home? How
mhm.
many people are taking leaves of absence? How many people are taking FMLA and don't even want to be paid? And What
Oh,
what is going? How many complaints are we getting? So those are the numbers that you're looking at and trying to understand. Now there it takes a while to show up either on the revenue side or the cost side. It will show up there, but one of the first indications is what I'm going to call those HR matrix of attendance, um, decline in attending company events. It's those little things that, wow, Troy Asberry got 68% of his people to show up to the company picnic, and you only got 26% of your people to show up. First year, okay. Second year, I think we need to do a better job of what's going on in that department because those are the sorts of things that give you telltale signs.
okay. So, and let me add this to it. In addition to those numbers, there's noises coming out of a particular leader's group.
That's
And
right.
and again, when we're talking about intellectual curiosity, when I think about what leaders can do as an employee, I get it. But what are some ways that leaders can demonstrate intellectual curiosity with their team members? Let's say all that's going on. The numbers are not what they could be compared to, other teams. What can they do? How does that intellectual curiosity work in that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. Because now as a leader, I gotta do a deep dive. Not a deep dive into the number, a deep dive into the team. So you know what? This week I want to go to that plant.
Mhm.
I want to show up unannounced and I want to walk around and I want to look and I want to be able to ask questions. I tell people as a COO, as a C-suite, the most important thing that I smell when I walk into a building? Fresh paint. I'm like, guys, you didn't have to do all that for me. I don't want to smell fresh paint. I
Mhm,
want to see this place operate as it normally operates. So
mhm,
sometimes I have to show up unannounced. Sometimes I have to show up on the 2 a.m. shift.
mhm,
Sometimes I have to show up and hey, let's go have I have a thing with tea with Troy, right? Where you can come in and sit down and ask questions. This is usually after a town hall. The next day, I have tea with Troy where we are literally sitting around and you can ask me any question that I didn't answer in the town hall. And that's where I get more information about, oh, okay, Terry, what possessed you to show up in Tea with Troy? I haven't seen you before. I've been here 2.5 years. This is your first one. Was it something in the presentation or was it something in your department that possessed you to be here today? And when I ask that question, I always get, can I stay and ask you, can I stay and tell you about it when everyone leaves? Of course you can. And
mhm,
so you want to be able to have those interactions so that you can understand and really get a sense and a pulse of what your organization is doing. And again, I've told you this, Terry. At the C suite, you have to be comfortable if you're running a worldwide organization that someone's messing up right now. That's okay. That's okay, as long as you understand that when you see the mess up, you can't turn the other way. And usually someone messes up because they're not following a policy, process, or procedure. So is that right? Or is there a particular reason why they weren't following that policy, process, procedure? Your job is to figure out which one of those you can fix. And
mhm,
if it's the employee who just says, look, I think that there's a better way, first of all, explore and see if their way was a better way and if there was a flaw in the system. And if it was, reward that.
mhm,
If it wasn't, and it wasn't making the product better and it wasn't making you faster or more efficient, then we've got to go back and retrain that employee.
Mhm.
So those are the things that have helped me in my career.
No, I appreciate that, and I think, so much can be gained by just, like you said, tea with Troy. I love that. What if during that session, you're giving information, you're having a great exchange, and again, the employees, are starting to give you, hints and may even come out and say, "Wow, this is the most information we've gotten in a while. I wish we could get this on a regular basis from our leader."
Yeah. So let me explain, Terry. Great question. Let me explain how I would handle that. I would be like, oh, that's interesting. Are you not having face-to-face meetings with your leader? Is your leader not having an opening conversation before you begin your shift? Is your leader not coming out and having lunch or coffee or tea with you all? Is there something I'm missing? Because this is regular information that I want you to receive on a regular basis. And if that answer is no, well, come on over here. Let's have a conversation. What department do you work for? Who is your leader? Who's their leader? Help me understand because I want to dig down and really understand where our communication is breaking down. I believe that we have to be open and honest with our communication and very transparent. And I'm also the guy that tells my employees there's certain things I can't tell you. I can't tell you if we're about to be acquired. I can't tell you that. I can't give you insider information like that. But I can give you some information that you're going to see some people in here looking around and kicking the tires on this. Do whatever you want to with that data. But I
Yeah.
didn't tell you we were about to be acquired. So I think it's important when people give you a piece of thread that you should pull that thread. And it may take you to some uncomfortable places, but as leaders, we're supposed to be in those uncomfortable places because we're the only ones who can make it comfortable for everybody else. And the bucks really do stop with you as the leader.
I agree, and I'm sorry, I keep going back to this example because I just really wanna hit a couple of key points. So you hear that, you have that conversation, and this is a new leader that you invested a lot of time in finding and interviewing and onboarding, and the numbers look good, but you're hearing something different from the team. So, what's the conversation with that leader?
Oh yeah, that's a very easy conversation, Terry. Again, your questions are great. So my way to handle these conversations is, hey, Terry, look, I love your numbers. I enjoy watching how your team is responding from doing the physical labor of our job, but you realize that there's another labor portion of our jobs. And I'm just not getting a good feeling that the team is responding to your leadership style. So here's what I want to do, Terry. I want to come back in and I'm not going to observe you anymore. I think that we're past that point. I like your numbers and I like the attention to detail there. But I think you would benefit from some leadership training that I'm going to talk to HR and give you so that we can help your leadership skills and your leadership communication and the way that your style is being received, which gives me an indication that there is a way that you're presenting it that's not being receptive in the manner in which you would like. Are you willing to take that journey with us?
Okay, so see what's interesting about that is, and I threw that out there, Troy, because I think this is so important. I think so many times when leaders are delivering really good numbers, but they know something else, we know something else is going on, we kind of look the other way. And you can do that, but that's when you start to see these other issues. And you put, you mentioned HR, and then HR is now brought into it because there's a perceived problem with a leader. And it's like there were so many opportunities along the way before it became a problem.
That's right.
Right. And so that, for me, that is the space that I've lived in for so long. And that's why I moved to operating discipline, looking at the enterprise level, because there are so many things that we can do at that level that prevent things happening here. And so as we started the conversation about hiring the right people for the, right position, onboarding, good fit and all of that, once they get in their roles, that's when, as you mentioned, the real work starts.
That's right.
And we have to look at the whole picture, not just the numbers that they're delivering. And I think, it's really important to look at how an organization has embedded that into their operations, because it can just be, you and the function under you that operate that way. But how do you get a whole organization to do that?
That's right. And Terry, I got to tell you, it always starts with tough conversations. Whether
Mhm.
they're good conversations or bad, these tough conversations have to be had. We cannot just have people who deliver good numbers. We also have to have people who deliver on our values. We
Yeah.
also have to have people who are good people, because at the end of the day, it is easy. It's easy to follow a good leader. It's easy to have good interactions with a good person. It
Yeah.
is very difficult to sustain performance when you have a bad leader.
Yeah.
It's just, and whether that's bad in language, bad in tone, bad in speech,
Mhm.
bad in delivery. It's not just how the person received it, it's also how you sent it. And we have to take responsibility for that as a leader. It's not just the news, it's how you presented the news. One of my favorite stories that I like to tell everybody is something that happened on the Huxtable show. The middle girl comes home and is marrying the janitor, and everyone's upset. And
Mhm.
Dr. Hustable goes out to the garage or to the backyard and he says, "It's not you. It's not that you are a janitor and that I'm a doctor and my wife is a lawyer. It's not you." And then he says, "Tell me your favorite meal." He says, "A steak." And he says, "Yeah, how do you like it? Do you like it with onions? Do you like it with this? Do you like it with that?" And he says, "Yes." And then he reaches over, because they're in the alley, and he picks up the trash can lid and he says, "Now, if I did all of that and I put it on this trash can lid and presented it to you, would you take it?" And he says, "Of course not. It's been out here and it's on a trash can." And he said, "That's how you were presented to me today. Not
Wow.
that you're a bad person.
Yeah.
It's just that you were presented to me in a way that I couldn't receive it." And so that's what I always tell leaders. Sometimes it's the way that you presented it. And there's a nice way to be able to present this. And I learned that from Clip Huxtable in the seventh grade, that it is all in the presentation. And so if I present it to you in a bad way, you're going to receive it in a bad way. And what we need to work on with our leaders is how to present good news easy. But how do we present bad news in such a way that people can receive it and respond in a positive manner? That's what we're trying to do as leaders.
No, I totally get it. As you know, you and I could talk for a long time on all of this, but we need to wrap it up. So, as we, look at operating discipline and all the different things we talked about in this episode, what would you like to leave leaders with?
Yeah. So, look, the way that I would like to leave leaders is that operating discipline starts with the hiring process, but it's also about your culture and the type of leader that you want to leave the organization. Your time is going to expire with your organization, hopefully in a great fashion. You're going to be there 20 years, do this performative analysis and turn the company into exactly what you want it to be. And then you're going to retire. That's the best news that happens. We're going to do all of that. And the question is what were the fingerprints that you left on the organization? No one's going to remember the explosive growth and the 12 acquisitions and how you took the stock from $1 to $200. What they are going to remember is the cultural aspects that you left on the company. They're going to remember Oh, this is the one that introduced roles, responsibilities, expectations. This is the one that introduced us to town halls on a quarterly basis. This is the one that, oh my God, remember that time we had tea with Troy and he did this, this, and this. Those are the cultural aspects. And here's the number one thing that everyone when I leave an organization say. When I say, hey, Terry, thank you. Thank you for all your hard work and service. And when you get home today, I need you to thank those who have supported you because you couldn't give us 120% if they weren't behind you supporting you. So whenever I say that, it's truly from the heart. But every time I've left an organization, there's always a little note. I just remember when you told me to thank my wife. I just remember when you told me to give my son a hug and tell him that you were proud that he graduated high school and that he's going to Harvard and that he's going to be the first Ivy League graduate in your family. And he invited you here today because of that. The last story I'll leave you with is that I was working at Texas Instrument and I was working the night shift, the midnight shift. And I had switched from midnight shift to the day shift, and my line tech, her name was Gloria Frost. Gloria said, hey, Troy, I know your kids are adults, but my kids would really like to come up here doing kids come to work day, and I work at night, and I'm going to be asleep. Do you mind picking my kids up and bringing them up? And I
Wow.
did. I pick her two kids up. So I got to tell you, as a black guy, I walk in with two little white kids, and everybody's like, oh, Troy, we didn't expect those to be your kids. And I explained they weren't. The reason I tell you that story is her daughter name is Crystal. I left. I've been gone 20 years. I get a note from Gloria Frost, and Gloria Frost says, hey, Crystal wants you to come to her wedding. I know it's a big ask. Do you mind coming to her wedding? And I said, absolutely. So when I see Crystal, I hug her. And I said, why'd you invite me? I haven't seen you in over 20 years. And she said, the kindness that you showed me and my brother when you brought us to go to work with your parent day and my parent worked at night. Just that kindness and how sweet and you took us out to eat lunch and we just hung out with you. I have never forgotten all of our interactions and words. And so I tell you that story as I come back to values. It's what you do, it's what you say, it's how you interact. That's the fingerprint that people are going to look at, and that's what they're going to remember. Again, they're not going to remember the explosive growth and the acquisitions. They're going to remember those little things that you think are so small, but are very important to how you leave the values of the organization.
Yeah. No, that's a really amazing story because we do touch each other's lives. And I think we need to be mindful how we measure success um, because success can be measured in many different ways. And the way that you just explained it, your success is based on your values. And I think wherever you go, whatever you choose to do, that is going to be the case. And that's one of the reasons why you personally stand out, and the people who have the opportunity to work with you will benefit from that, learn from that, and hopefully carry that forward. So, Troy, I can't tell you how many things I've learned from you and how much I've enjoyed the conversation. And I think our audience is really going to think about this for a long time because there's so many nuggets in there. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And the bottom line, folks, is performance isn't accidental. It is built into the organization, and you are already building. The question is, what are you building? Thank you so much. This is the Operating Discipline with Terry Wilson, and we'll catch you on another conversation.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Terry. I appreciate you. Talk to you soon. Bye now.